Hello, my YouTube friends, and good morning. I hope you're all doing well. Tesla crushed it. UPS crushed it. Earnings keep coming in strong despite all of the news and all of the fear in the media. All the wars, all the strikes, Boeing with their strike. In fact, the machinists didn't sign the agreement and the stock's hurting a bit today. But to be quite honest, the economy seems to be doing just fine. So all of the doom and gloomers out there calling for this big recession, which might come, keep saving, keep investing, keep putting your money away. It's really important for the future. Anyway, let's dig into some of those earnings and see what you think. And what do you guys think about what's going on with these stocks? So Tesla crushed it on every metric. They really did. I have my own concerns about Tesla in terms of the stock valuation, but to be fair to the earnings report, they beat top and bottom line. They gave great guidance going forward. They're talking about building a less expensive car. The concern I have about that is I'm not sure that the margins will be quite the same because part of the nice thing about Tesla is their margins were incredible. I think it was 19% margins on revenue, which for a car company is outrageous. And if they get the robo taxi and everything else, then maybe the stock is a bargain. That's for you guys to decide. I'll do my little spiel of this is not financial advice. Please don't use any of this to make financial decisions. This is just entertainment purposes only. You guys need to do your own research, reach out to your financial advisors, and do what you need to do for your own investments. Anyway, now that we got that out of the way, Tesla really beat everything on every level. And what was nice is hearing what they expect for next year and going forward for next quarter, that next quarter is going to be a strong quarter as well. The stock move looks bigger than it really is because after that, when he did the robo taxi thing, like I said, I think if you saw the other video, I fell asleep during it. It was so boring and it just, there wasn't good information and nothing that was like new or innovative or suggesting when they'll get to the market or anything of value. Well, the stock sold off a good bit after that and kept kind of dragging going into the earnings. So when the earnings beat, as much as the stock looks like it's up today, I would take about, $12 or something out of it just from the making up where it was prior to that event. You add that onto today's earnings, and it doesn't really surprise me. Last I looked, it was trading over $250 a share. I think it closed at like 213 ish, if my memory is right. I think it's really reasonable because it fell from somewhere around 230 or 235. And if I use that level to see what it's done today, it's still a big move. But to be fair, they had great earnings and good guidance. I don't have a very large position in Tesla. I have no concern whether it goes up or down. I'm too worried about investing a big amount of money into it because kind of like what I talk about with Costco, I feel like the valuation's a little high, which is why I really pointed out you need to do your own research. If it's a company you love, I get it. I mean, when I look at all of the aspects of Tesla, they control the charging stations, they control repairs, and much different than other car companies because by having the dealership, it's almost more like a franchise. It's not like when you're dealing with Ford or GM that you're going to the dealership with them. At Tesla, you're going to Tesla and they own all of that stuff. And as I said, obviously the charging stations, if they get the robo taxis going forward, they'll get into that space. I don't know if they'll end up partnering with a company like Uber or trying to do it on their own or where they'll go with it. It'd be kind of cool if it was just Tesla and they went to do their own thing. But to be fair, Uber and Lyft and them, they have such a big presence in that space that you might have to partner with them. And then all the other things he works on, like Elon Musk, while I don't tend to like him very much, if I were perfectly frank, he's done incredibly well. He's a great promoter. He has great ideas and good engineers who seem to be able to pull things off. It just tends to take longer than usual. The other thing I like is I love the concept that he's making an electric, not an 18-wheel semi. He's making an electric semi. And when I think about like if I were in the semi business and I were driving a truck, to be able to have a Tesla, when I think about mine versus when I used to have just regular car, not that it's not a regular car, but the the maintenance costs, it's like a joke in comparison. But the car that I bought 10 years ago, my mom almost cut my head off because she was like, well, you don't know if these are even going to work or anything else. But honestly, in the past 10 years, we bought the car in December or November of 2014. So it's literally been going on exactly 10 years or right close to it. We've had less than $500 in actual repair bills. I can't imagine, and that includes, like, I don't think we've ever replaced the brakes, and we've got well over 100,000 miles on it because typically I don't even touch the brakes on the Tesla because of the regenerative braking and the way that that works. Windshield wipers, obviously, tires, obviously, but we've had like two or three little $99 repairs or $79, and then the only other thing we had to replace the screen, and that was about 11 or $1,200. But 2 years later, I got a thing in the mail that it was a recall, and they actually rebated it and gave us a check back for what we had spent to do that replacement. So the only thing that was a cost over that time, no timing belts, no oil changes. The electric bill, they offered an incentive when we signed up if you got an electric vehicle in Nevada, where our electric bill actually went down. So the gas savings on top of the electric actually going down. And then when that started to become more normalized as more people had it, we decided to add solar this year. So our bill for electric is actually zero. So I don't think of paying any gas. It's just an incredible savings on the car with n- no maintenance. So if you're driving a semi and you can mitigate whatever that maintenance is and potentially have less, pulled over at the side of the road. And I'm guessing when you have a problem, it's rather expensive because it's not like you can just go anywhere to work on a semi truck. You probably need special mechanics that probably get higher pay. I don't know the industry, just a guess of mine. But if I were a truck driver, how excited I'd be to be able to have the Tesla vehicle. And when he was talking about it, I think it's going to have acceleration similar to the cars. So imagine having a big load going up one of those hills in Colorado where half of those trucks have to be in the right lane because they're barely able to, like, they probably can't get out of first gear or potentially second. They're driving like 5, 10 miles an hour up those giant hills in places like Colorado, getting into a Tesla semi and being able to actually just go. Like, it should be incredible, and I'm guessing they have better safety. And if he adds the self-driving to something like that, like, super cool. Anyway, that's me rambling about the stuff that I see. So I get that Tesla could be a great company. I still feel like the stock valuation's a little rich, so it's hard for me to just dive into it. Now, UPS, on the other hand, for those of you who've been listening, I feel like it's been a bargain. So it doesn't surprise me to see it up so much after the earnings today. They still, I still think it may be a 5% dividend for a company like UPS that's been around as long as it has and has the earnings that they do. They're going to weather whatever storm is put in front of them. And I really think as we get into the Christmas season, what everybody's going to see is that Christmas is still really good, or sales are going to be good, which is going to include a company like UPS who's going to have to ship all those packages all over the country, and then all the returns on top of it. So yes, they probably have competition coming on board from Amazon and some of the others, but they're still one of the best in logistics. Their pricing's really reasonable. When I go to I have a mailbox place, and you have your option of USPS, UPS, or FedEx when you bring stuff there. And it seems like they're really reasonably priced. They have good options, and I've never had any real trouble with them. Another company that I love here is Google, around $160 a share. I think it's getting super inexpensive based on earnings and growth. I think the concern is that ChatGPT, since they don't really pay their ads and they don't really work their search engine the same way, that if they start drawing more business, that it's going to take away from the Google search engine, which is still a main driver of a lot of their revenue. Thing is big companies that have a moat that have been around a long time. Google's like, we use the word, I'm going to go Google it. It's going to take a long time for that to change. It kind of reminds me of something like Kleenex. A lot of people don't call it tissue paper, they call it Kleenex just because that's the name associated with it. That makes me think Google will be there a long time. But then you incorporate that they have so many other companies wrapped into that alphabet name, that you have YouTube and all the others. It's not like it's 100% reliant on that piece of the business. And if that piece of the business continues to grow and do better than what's expected, along with the competition coming in, and they have their own AI as well, and I think that'll just take time to really start bringing into the mix. I see Google as being a really good value right here. They have earnings coming up. I think it's next week. It could make it really volatile. Of course, it could go either way. And if they have a rough earnings, it's going to beat it up even more. But as I've watched it drift lower going into the earnings, I like it more and more at these levels. Now, please forgive if some of this ends up repetitive because I scheduled a live for 10:30. I wasn't feeling so great this morning, so I'm not 100% sure if I'll stick with it. But at least for now, I plan to at least log in. And if some of you sign in, I'll have a chat and I'll talk about some of the same stuff. It was interesting that the housing sales came in a little bit better than expected because I can tell you as somebody who does it, it hasn't really picked up. So I'm a little surprised that the sales were higher than they thought they would be. And it is my one concern that we could see a housing correction still. I don't know, but to be fair to the doom and gloomers out there, the prices are high. And even after the Fed cut last time, the rates have done nothing but go higher. I have a feeling the Fed's going to be really cautious because the data that's come in, and that's part of the Trump trade. Like, there's concern that if Trump adds the tariffs and some of the other stuff, now this is not political, I'm just analyzing it financially. So please don't read in any of it. But the potentially that's inflationary. So we've seen the 10-year go up. It may create an opportunity where the Fed's still able to cut the short end of the curve and the long end just hold strong, which is actually what I thought would happen in the end anyway. So whether it's an excuse that it's a Trump trade or that's a reality, that does seem to be what's going on. But I do think it gives the Fed opportunity if they didn't want to cut to potentially skip a meeting. I don't think they're going to cut another 50 basis points. I don't see what the advantage of that would be. I think most likely that they'll cut a quarter, and they'll probably be pretty nervous about what's going on because they'll have concerns about the inflation coming again, but it's possible that they have a larger concern about unemployment to where they're going to want to cut. Now, what's going on with the strikes with Boeing and the ones that already finished with the dock workers and there was, oh, the auto workers, that's all inflationary as well. So I know that has to be a concern of the Fed when they have these meetings. But if their bigger concern is the unemployment, like I said, they'll probably stay the path of continuing to cut as long as like CPI is staying around 3 or below it. Maybe they'll become accepting of a 3% inflation or a little bit higher instead of trying to get to their 2% target. Maybe that rhetoric changes in time. There's still no reason to keep short term rates close to 5% if CPI is below 3. That's it's still a little restrictive. I'm not sure we need to slow the economy down more because it feels like it has in some sectors. I think what's tough is some of the things that I've talked about in other videos is I see a real separation of the haves and the have-nots. At least that's how I feel. And if the inflation continues, I think that continues to get harder. The people that are on a lower end income, it becomes tough as the grocery bills go up and everything gets more expensive. Now, to be fair, those of you who just go to the store and just buy whatever and don't think about it, I gotta tell you, the sales that they do at the Albertsons and Smiths, if we pay attention to the coupons and buy what's on sale, things are not so terrible and the inflation is not so bad. I think about what my grocery bill was like a year and a half ago in the height of all of what was going on, and the coupons were not nearly as good and the bills were really expensive. My wife is like a superstar at paying attention to that stuff, and she'll buy, 3 ice creams and put them in the freezer because they're on sale for $2.99, and I mean a big one. And the same happens with all sorts of things. Now we're a little bit snobby about like the meats that we buy because we only want to buy the organic and stuff like that. I don't know. You can point at me, call me an idiot. Maybe it's better, maybe it isn't, but we try to be better about the things we buy and what goes into them. But when we pay attention to the staples, it's really amazing what's discounted and how cheap it gets. So I don't feel the pressure at the grocery store of the inflation going through the way that the media makes it out to be. I do feel it at restaurants or if we when we travel or whatever it is when we go to stores, and I'm amazed to see. And it's usually the inexpensive stuff. How a $10 expense used to feel like, geez, I thought that used to be $2 or $3. But since I meant like going to restaurants, it's amazing how going to lunch is easily $20 when I used to think of it as 5 to 10. And that's for one person. When I go with my buddy, it's easily running 40 or 50 if we go to a simple like a chain like BJ's, which isn't like fast food, but it isn't like a nice restaurant. But if we go to anything like that, it's more expensive than I would expect it to be. And that hurts a lot of people. Maybe it means we go out a little less, maybe it's the slowdown, but it also increases their earnings. Even if their costs go up, if they're raising their what they charge as well and creating a bigger spread between the cost and the charge, they're more profitable as inflation continues. So it'll be really interesting to see if there's still room on pricing power for people to be able to continue to raise costs if we do get back into an inflationary cycle. And if I don't know if it'll matter if it's Trump or Harris or whoever, but whichever one, if we continue to push the inflation, is there still room for it to grow because the people who have enough money, they're still buying it, they're just complaining. And the people on the lower end, well, maybe they just start moving in, having roommates, and finding other ways to save. But I do worry that it's a separation of like the haves and the have nots. And I even mean down to the businesses, that the companies that are struggling are really struggling. Some of the small mom and pop companies. And I get that's kind of where Harris's plan of giving the $50,000 to small business, but I just think that ends up being inflationary too, because people will learn how to take advantage of it, and it won't really go to the places it goes to, which is the shame of all of it. I mean, everybody's really tough on government and the greed and so on, but you have to hope that their goal is to do what's good and that it just doesn't go that way because people know how to work the system and they don't think of every single avenue that somebody might do to take advantage, and then they have to accept a certain amount of it. I mean, we all saw how egregious it got during COVID and how many companies just took advantage of free money. It was awful. But that tends to be what people do. They see an opportunity. Now, if you've made it this far into the video, and I'm not quite done yet, but I still want to address it, please do me a favor. I can't tell you how much it really does help the channel. If you could hit that subscribe button if you're not a subscriber yet, but also if you could hit the like button, and even if you could make some comments, that really helps YouTube's algorithm. It helps me build the channel. It's been cool watching this. As you guys know, the ones who've been around a while, I do this to help myself, but it's been nice to see people following. And when you guys make comments, I really like that. I like the conversation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer. I don't watch everything, so I don't always know about a specific stock, but I do watch a lot of things, so I'll have opinions on sectors and currencies and metals, which is another thing now that I just said that. I still think silver is a great buy, even above $30 an ounce. Um, I think the inflation is going to go through the metals. What's interesting is that the dollar hasn't been going stronger. So it's really weird, or the dollar has been getting stronger. It hasn't been getting weaker. It's weird for me to see the dollar weakness and then everything else, or dollar strength, and still having, gold and silver making new highs, the stock market making new highs, and so on. That tends to not be the case. And I still think the dollar's going to reverse and start weakening, which is why I keep making those Freudian slips with it and talking about the weaker dollar, because it's hard for me not to envision a scenario where the dollar gets weaker. It's just a tough situation in terms of worldwide everything. If the dollar continues to get stronger, that means bigger inflation in pretty much all the other countries. That's why it's so hard for me to envision a scenario where the dollar just continues and continues to get stronger. When you go to Japan and the dollar's as strong as it is, it's going to push the locals where they're going to have to keep up with foreigners coming in and visiting. They're going to have inflation, and it's hard for them to just continue to hold their interest rates low just because if they're having high inflation at some point, like what we did, you would think they'd have to raise the interest rates to calm the inflation. I mean, to be fair to the people who live there, things are getting outrageously expensive, and the dollar's so strong, it's not so terrible for us. But if you live there and you're getting paid in Japanese yen and prices are just going through the roof, my God, Tokyo's gotten more expensive than anywhere in terms of Japanese yen. Now, if you go into and you have dollars and you're able to use your dollars to buy the yen's super cheap. It actually you do okay, and it's not so terrible. Especially like once you get past accommodations. I mean, accommodations in Tokyo seem extremely expensive, but going out to food and whatever else seems really reasonably priced. But that extrapolates to everywhere, which is part of why it's hard for me not to see the dollar start to begin to get weaker, which is part of my theory on silver. If the dollar starts weakening, it's not necessarily that silver's going up in value, but it's probably going up in terms of dollars against the silver. It's interesting that lately the dollar's been getting stronger and silver and gold have been as well. Generally, that's not quite the case. As the dollar starts to weaken, I think we'll see it get exacerbated and really shoot up a good bit. I think silver could be at $50 rather quickly, and I guess we'll see. It's not something I like. I'm not about to buy a whole ton of silver and like it's too heavy and too stupid. Like, but I enjoy watching everything, which is kind of what I was getting at and why metals came up. The other company I really like, and I'll only touch on it a bit before I wrap up, is Match.com. Something nobody really pays attention to. I was watching something this morning that was talking about it's a company I've owned for a long time, and if anything, I think I'm down money. I think I bought it in the 40s, and it's trading around $37 a share. But I probably had it 2 or 3 years now, and I'm really not getting out of it, and they noted some of the reasons I'm not getting out of it, which is right now it's trading around a 16 price to earnings ratio based on today's valuation. And they're growing at something like 15 to 17% per year. So to me, that's a steal. Like that's a bargain of a company. So even though I'm down money and I haven't really done well with it and I've sat on it a long time, I really don't plan on getting out anytime soon. If anything, I've thought about buying more simply because sometimes those things just stay off of people's radar for a long time because before it becomes just so inexpensive that people can't ignore it and then it can really start to go. And maybe that doesn't happen, but it's one of the companies that I actually own, so full disclosure, that I think seems really cheap on every metric that I look at. And it's hard for me to envision a situation where people aren't meeting people more and more online. It's so normal for the younger generation. It isn't for, when I grew up, but it's Match.com, and they own a bunch of others. Like they're a huge conglomerate of online dating apps, and they're even doing a bunch internationally. And I think Asia's a decent percentage of their business, and I think that continues to grow. I think you see the world just getting more and more used to meeting online, and maybe meeting people who don't necessarily live right next door. So it's one of the companies I really like. I think it's really well valued right here. Again, not financial advice. You need to make your own decisions. Reach out to your financial advisors and do your own research. This is just entertainment purposes only. Anyway, have a great day. I hope you guys enjoy it. I'll probably be stepping onto the live and maybe I post this one tomorrow. So it's not all at the same time. Maybe I do it today. I guess we'll see. Not sure what I'll decide. Have a great one. Enjoy the day, and I'll talk to you guys soon.